March 8th, 2023 is International Women's Day, and I want to celebrate it by having a conversation about it. We're going to spark that conversation with Toni Collis, who is going to be holding an event on March 8th. But I want to frame this by going to the language of the UN Women's Division, who started an incredible website to help us really dig into what does it mean to have International Women's Day. And I'm just going to read you just a quote from their website. It says, "From the earliest days of computing to the present age of virtual reality and artificial intelligence, women have made untold contributions to the digital world in which we increasingly live. Their accomplishments have been against all odds in a field that has historically neither welcomed nor appreciated them." And there you have the importance of International Women's Day, to look at historically how women have been welcomed, how women have risen, and where there's some limitations still and how we experience those limitations. I want to posit, I guess, my first idea with Toni. Toni, welcome to Swell, by the way. You are having this great conversation on March 8th with people who are in the space of recruitment, of coaching, people who are in the field of data science. You're going to have probably a vigorous examination of what's up for us next, because preparing with education and building your skill sets and then going out into the world, how do you anticipate this conversation going? Because we're at a time right now where we're seeing so much layoffs. We have to look at the context in which we're in so that we say, okay, we want to support women, we want to acknowledge what's gone on. How do we anticipate moving forward in a world where there seems to be a little instability? I want to look at that head on with you right now as a starting point. Given the context we're in, how do we move forward with positivity and with strategy?
Thanks for inviting me to this conversation. I really, really appreciate it. This is a topic very dear to my heart, so thank you, Deborah, for setting this up. And I think you've really hit something incredibly important there, which is moving forward in this period of time when we are in, it is incredibly unstable. It is incredibly pessimistic feeling. So how do we bring positivity and optimism? And I love the fact you dug into like bringing strategy to that, because one of the things I think that we miss out on as women is we're less exposed to people being strategic around us. That's probably a longer debate, but I think we have fewer role models of people being strategic in their careers, at least visibly strategic, that we get to see. And one of the things I advocate is being strategic with your career. One thing I would definitely encourage everybody to recognize right now is that although there are these layoffs, there are plenty of jobs out there. It is daunting. I have clients who are applying for jobs and they are getting fewer responses than they were a year ago. But having said that, they are getting responses. There are a lot of jobs. There are a lot of people applying for every job. And so you quite often get silence because the prospective employer is overwhelmed. But there are still opportunities out there. So first of all, take some positivity from me as a coach who works with women in tech, and know that people are hiring, people are getting job offers. The salaries are a little bit lower than a year ago. If you negotiated well a year ago, you could get a really kick-ass offer. Today, if you would still get a good offer, but if you negotiate hard, you're not going to get quite that high level. That's anecdotal. I don't know if the data is actually being delivered on that one. So there are options. But I think part of what I want everybody to recognize here is that there is a real shift in acceptance of why we need diversity in the workplace, which is why International Women's Day is so incredibly important, because part of the work it's done over the last however many years it's been going, I don't actually know how many years it's been going, is this push for recognition that diverse teams, diverse leadership in particular, which is what I really care about, makes better technology. I do what I do. I was a technologist, but I do what I do now because I've realized that the human race cannot afford for society to catch up and just wait for women to be in leadership. Technology permeates every sector of what we do as a species. It is the solution to medical issues, to climate change, to everything else we can think of. If women aren't involved in making decisions at the executive level, we're not building technology fit for the human race and solving all these very real challenges. So here's where I bring in the strategy piece. I want you, for the benefit of the human race, to be strategic with your career rather than tactical. Tactical is, I need a job, I'm just going to apply for everything out there. Strategic is, who do I want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time? Who do I want to have been by the time I'm wrapping this up and I'm done and I'm so proud of myself? And then work backwards from there. This is something I'm incredibly passionate about getting people to do. And when you have that long-term direction, I call it the North Star of our careers, the direction of travel, a strategic direction, we feel more optimistic. Yes, there can still be downs, there are still going to be lows you have to go through, but we can be so much more optimistic. So I really hope that paints the path for you to get excited again, because a lot of what we need to do to overcome these downturns is get excited. So start with looking for that North Star. I'd love to know, Deborah, if that's something you think people are doing, if you've ever done it in your career, anybody else listening to this, I'd love to know if this is something you struggle with or getting on with well. And I'm just going to put it out there. What are people doing for International Women's Day?
Toni, so great to hear your voice. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your love of community and your ability to create experiences for people to support each other in this incredibly interesting time. And imbuing this with a sense of optimism, we have to do that. Not to be tethered too much to the limitations of reality, but to actually have that balance of here's now, truth now, here's the vision later. I think that's always been the struggle. And especially on International Women's Day, we see the capacity for so many women to have multitasked the 5 different lives they lead every single day. In the tech world specifically, I think that the more we are part of innovation, the more our DNA is imbued in the results. And it's so important to create environments, both technologically and sociologically, that include women in all of our powerful ways. In terms of identifying our true north, I think it's always acknowledging our gifts, leveraging our gifts. I always knew I was into packaging ideas quickly, whether it was a song or a podcast. I've always been in the audio space, always using my voice. It's been an easy ride for me to know who I am. Very difficult to find consistent places in the world that give me my worth. But I think that for me, it's been very helpful to always have that vision board alive. So given what we're talking about right now, what are the steps you give people to create the vision board as a parallel universe to what they're limited by now? I want to talk about limitation, and I want to talk about optimism. How do you advise people inside limitations that are real and guiding them to have vision even inside the limitation? It reminds me of a story of a Holocaust survivor that said she was laying on the ground after being shot, and she looked at the blade of grass beneath her eyeballs, and she said, I still have a choice to pick whatever blade of grass I want, and to eat, actually. And she said, I still have choice. And given that choice, I knew I was alive, and I moved forward with that choice. She became a doctor, and she's an amazing woman. But it's about choice. If you don't imagine yourself having choice, life could feel horrible. How do you help people see that they have choice, even in their limitations, especially in the age of technology when everything's exploding and there seems to be so much possibility? Sometimes as a human, fragile soul, we get limited by our own perception. How do you work with reality versus visioning, and what advice do you give for people to keep track of their vision while they're tethered to their reality?
Oh, I love this question. I love talking about choice because I think so many of us think we don't have choice. One of the things I like to say to my clients is you have choice about everything. You get to choose whether you feed your children even. And yes, if you don't feed your children, the outcome is not a great one. They starve, it's criminal and all that kind of stuff. We get the choice whether or not we pay for our groceries, right? We have choices all of the time. And particularly I chose those two because it feels like we never have a choice. Of course we have to pay for our groceries. Of course we have to feed our kids. We wouldn't consider anything else. But we actually have choice. And I think that's a really important thing to just pull out. Because even in the worst scenarios, like the story you shared about the Holocaust survivor lady, that's a beautiful story. We have so much choice that we don't see. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out and break the law. I'm not saying you should go out and neglect your children. But I am saying, what legitimately are you choosing today? And I think it's always worth writing down, going through your day and saying, What am I choosing to do today? And you probably think you're on autopilot and don't have any choice. You have choice whether you get up in the morning. You have choice whether you have breakfast. You have a choice whether you turn up to that meeting, whether you do that report. What choices do you have? So this is the first thing, to just open your brain to the fact you have more choice than you think you do. But then I like to stretch people's imagination. One thing I've learned as a coach is that people really struggle to think about what next, what in the next week, next month, next year we struggle with. But if we push that out to 10 years plus, our brains somehow become disassociated from it. It's actually interesting to me. We tend to over-expect what we can achieve in 12 months, but under-expect what we can achieve in 10 years or 5 years. I find that utterly fascinating. But what I like to therefore do is really focus on, it sounds quite morbid, but end of life. I like to ask people, if you were famous, what would you be famous for? If you were on your deathbed and you were thinking, I've had a fabulous existence. I am so proud of what I've achieved. I've changed the world. I've done this. What would it be? Because for many of us, as long as you're honest with yourself, and this is where having a coach can actually really help you, because they will pull out the honesty rather than you like having a thought and immediately diminishing it, saying, oh, I can't possibly think that. I don't, it's bad to be famous, or I could never be a CEO, or I could never be a CTO or a vice president, or, I want to just make a lot of money and lie on the beach, but I can't possibly say that out loud. And I think we have these thoughts that stop us admitting to ourselves and then outside to other people what it is we really like. So try and find yourself a trusted friend, ideally a coach, because part of the relationship with a coach is non-judgmental, who is going to no, you were about to say something there. What was it? What was going on underneath? I think that's a beautiful thing to do. And just pull out these big ideas, the things that, hey, I've won a Nobel Prize. I've won a Nobel Peace Prize. I've invented something. I was the founder of a company that went unicorn, What is it that you want to be? And don't limit yourself. Because if we don't have dreams, we have no sense of direction. Our dreams open our eyes to our choices. So we want to figure out our dreams, because then we can ask ourselves, well, what choices am I making today that are accelerating towards that choice or diminishing my capability of moving in that direction? And I really think that's a super powerful place to start analysing this. And it's one of the things I'm going to be doing actually later today as part of International Women's Day. I'm running an event, and I'm just going to put this out there. We start at 8:30 Pacific time. You go to my website to find out more, tonicollis.com/IWD for International Women's Day, and register and sign up. It's completely free. But one of the things I'm going to be talking about is how to create yourself that career strategy to get excited about and give you that purpose and direction. I wish all of us had this, and I think as women, we have less of it. And so the more we can do to lift each other up, the better. I can't wait for that event later today. So hopefully see some of you there.
Hey, thank you for this. And I thank you for the invitation. I wasn't able to come yesterday, and I'm just wondering how it went, because everything you just talked about around, giving over to imagination, but then anchoring it with a strategy is exactly what coaches are really good at, because they don't have the limitations of someone who is grappling with, do I have the permission or the audacity to see this next big vision that I have and commit to it? I'm wondering how the event went and what takeaways you have from it. And particularly since today is not International Women's Day anymore, but in fact it's, of course, we're in the glow of it. And I think that we always need to reflect on our role as advocates for each other and as inspirations for each other. But do you, when you think about the very private experience of somebody's dreaming of their own, eulogy, let's say, this was Toni and she did this, this, and this, and we love her for this, and she broke into new territories this way and this way. Like, it's really about relationships that you had along the way. And those relationships are sort of defined and refined by how we showed up in them because of the other parts of our life that were doing okay. I think, they always say at the end of one's life, they reflect on love and relationship more than career. But when we're navigating our career, I think we have to think about who we want to spend time with. and who is going to inspire us, and what lives are we going to impact, and what kind of mood am I going to be in because I'm having a really kick-ass career. All these things weave into themselves, each other, and that's what makes for a really beautiful life. And I think we're in this conversation literally to be moving in this thought process. Like, I think being stuck is where people get afraid. When it comes to coaching, I just wanted to ask you, I have a dear friend who I would love to get a coach. He's a photographer. He's been doing it for 30 years. We've been talking about him getting a coach. And it makes me wonder, when people only have a certain amount of money to spend on something like a coach, how do they look for one? And how do they set expectations when clearly, especially people who are at like their sunset career, how do you advise people to make choices about spending money on a coach, as opposed to, something else? I know there's a lot of coaches on Swell, so I find it interesting, like, how do coaches advise people about getting coaches? And in the spirit of International Women's Day, when is it not okay to use your friends as a coach? And I know women are so good at supporting each other. When is it better to get a coach than to lean on to friends?